Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Okay, so let's move on to you, Mike. And you're in the fortunate position of getting access to Apple Intelligence and being able. I have an iPhone 12. I have to go buy a 15 Pro or 16 now to get it. But you've been playing with Apple Intelligence and Siri. What have you learned?
I'm going to share the screen again. So those of you, I will try to describe as much as possible for those of you who are listening to the podcast. But if you want to see the screen share, you're going to have to watch us on our website or on YouTube. Give me 1 second here to bring that up. There we go. Can you see? Are you seeing?
Yes.
And is it filling the screen?
Mostly.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Okay. So get to the beginning of this. The iPhone, firstly, what Apple has that very few other companies have besides Android is distribution, control over that distribution. They have fingers and voices of the users, and their user base with iOS now is whatever 2 billion of iOS and Mac is somewhere in the order of 2 billion users. Now, clearly, and what they have offered for everybody is this Spotlight search, which is a federated search that takes users to a very confusing set of local options. And what they have started to implement, not just on the more advanced iPhones, on virtually every M1 Mac, is Siri search. And Siri search can either be voice or now it can be text. And the best way to sort of interact with it is through text because it gives you a little more control. The visuals are a little better. So most of what you're seeing is going to be interacting with Siri search through text, which is achievable on any screen on the phone and in any screen on your M version Mac is accessible without any voice interaction, which I think. One of the things about text is it's a more natural way to interact with a phone than voice. Voice has had historically a series of problems that Apple is dealing with, that everybody's dealing with. The brittleness of Siri, the fact that you needed to know certain commands, the inability of Siri to translate English language to the structured language of the computer. And the interface itself, as David's talked about in the past, is a somewhat voices and audio back is a somewhat limited interface. And Apple is dealing with many of those. And we see this in their local search. But it's now showing up in many other areas. So, for example, if you look for Sunday's game, it will give you a summary at the top of the screen. And if you click into it, you get literally a 2-page little mini website detailing this particular game in week 9, the highlights, the box score, whatever. So that information is instantly available from Apple's sports app, one presumes, although this presentation doesn't drive you to the sports app. The same thing is happening with movies and TV shows. I typed in best new streaming show and you get a list. Interestingly, Netflix is not included in this list because Netflix and Apple are at odds over Netflix including their data in Apple TV Plus, which is the graph that this is using, but is presented instantly with a scrollable page. And when you click through, you're brought to a little mini website about one of the given results where you can view it streaming and other links about it and major actors and so on. So you're being given, without having to go to the app, without having to go to the website, you're being presented information that you are searching for. And
it's an app-like experience. It's an app-like experience.
It's a post-app-like experience, right? Where they're just extracting the web page or the web information into a very quick, easy, light interaction, which is particularly in sports. That's what you want. You want the quick update. And if you haven't used the Apple Sports app, it's the only way I can follow a football game. It's like you get an update in 5 minutes, you get to see what's happening. It's in nearly real time. It's actually quite impressive. But they're doing the same thing with news. And if you do a search that requires Apple to go out to the web, they bring back trusted resources, 2 web results in this one, and 1 from their news app. But if you click through to the election news from, you then are brought to, again, a little mini summary of what's going on. Tragic as this result.
And this is the Apple News app that they're drawing from, right?
Right, that's correct. So you can see that on the phone, Apple is drawing many broader personal requests for information that might have become either a ChatGPT search or a Google search, are bringing it directly from the graphs that Apple has been building. Then this, if you and this works with actions across apps, so you can type, say, find, and it will give you a suggestion, and it will actually go do it. So again, I don't have to go into the app. I mean, what we're seeing here is sort of a post-app search environment that's much, much better than the federated result, and it works across Apple instructions. For example, you can ask anything about your settings, and they will give you detailed instructions on how to interact with your settings. It works across Wikipedia, Who Stars in Shrinking, Jason Segel, and then this follow-up query, what other movies has he been in? Again, you can see they're keeping the context here and giving me additional Wikipedia results. And interestingly, with recipes, which is, if you think about what people typically need in their daily life or want in their daily life, news, local information, where to eat lunch, sports information, movie information.
What to make for dinner.
What to make for dinner. When you go for recipes, you only get 3 or 4 videos and a link to YouTube. The videos are from YouTube, which made me think that perhaps Apple is monetizing this broader search beyond, in a way that isn't being attacked by the DOJ and still generating income. Now, they do, when they don't have the answer within your personal realm, do go out to the web. This, for example, search how to hire an employment attorney, gives me 3 top Google results and then allows me to search on Google. So they're still doing Google search, and they will do in 18.2, which is coming in December, will do the same thing with ChatGPT. They will send some percentage of worldwide information that Apple doesn't see as personal to you out to either ChatGPT or Gemini or the web. So but what Apple is doing here is they're going for 3 or 4 or 5 results versus historically, like they've done with Spotlight or with Safari, 1 result. And that is more than it's a big change, because now, and they're then taking those limited results and keeping you within the context of that information without sort of going elsewhere. Now, in addition, though, what I found very fascinating about this local search, when you do this, ultimately Siri is this text search, for it to succeed, has to replace that Spotlight search on the home screen, which clearly it could do without any difficulty. And it has to be less buried, so other people than geeks like me find it. But Siri is largely going to live or die on audio, on voice search. And we've seen a lot of interesting stuff from Apple solving voice search's problems, right? You can see their work with noise isolation in the current iPod Pros. It can shut off on a phone call background noise. You can see their stuff with noise enhancement or voice enhancement with their hearing aid feature. And you see this feature that allows you to just reduce all volumes across all spectrums in their noise reduction. So they're doing a lot of work with audio, which will improve your interaction with Siri. They're using LLMs to reduce the brittleness of going from English to the structured computer language, and that's working pretty well. And when I did this query audibly, it gave me one choice at a time. It said, "Do you want to go to lunch at the Beef and Barrel?" I shook my head no, and the Apple AirPods understand the movement no. They gave me the second one, on the side shop. I shook my head no, and it gave me the third one, of Brothers Bistro. I said yes, and then Siri said to me, "Do you want me to call them, or do you want me to provide driving?" instructions. So what we're beginning to see is the beginning of agentic AI, where knowledge on the phone and in the private cloud of the data allows Apple to not just give you the information, but act on it. And given that they control distribution so tightly, the interface for voice is still not optimal. Interface for for voice on a phone isn't the best way, but it is in everybody's pocket. And to me, it isn't a search engine. It is Apple's version of private or personal, but it is certainly encroaching on the bigger search and AI chat environments pretty dramatically.
So this is buried. Accessing this currently is buried on the iPhone interface.
Well, I mean, it is available either by activating Siri, so you can say, "Hey Siri," it'll come up. You can activate it with a button, or if you want the text interface, you have to double click at the bottom of the screen. But that it's a simple step to get from a double click at the bottom of the screen to bring up a text box to replacing Spotlight, which I think is going to happen here because this is so much better than federated search because it gives you answers and can take action. And in 18.2, they're implementing what's called app intent. App intents are mapping actions within apps to schema within Siri so that you can, like I did with Apple Maps, get something to happen. Right. You can have that happen across the whole.
Make a restaurant reservation, for example.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Well, the irony of this is that this was the original vision for Siri, right? This was the very original vision for Siri before Apple bought Siri. I spoke to I'm going to mispronounce his last name. I'm going to blow his last name, so I won't. One of the founders of Siri. I talked to those guys right when it sort of showed up, and their vision was a virtual assistant that would help you that would send you directly to trusted sources or preferred sources and help you take action. They were not close to realizing that, but that was the vision, and it's taken 14 years to get to the point where it's starting to be realized, which is really interesting.
Right. The voice recognition AI, the AI, the chat AI, all of these large language models are offering up solutions to the intractable problems we saw with not just Siri, but with Alexa and Google Assistant as well. I mean, these problems were not surmountable with previous technology. They were too brittle. They didn't work that well. And this offers a vision, I think, of where a lot of search is going and a lot of interaction on the screen is going. And it's less web reliant, less app reliant, more graph reliant, and perhaps more voice reliant.
So David, it seems like you wanted to say something, and
no, not necessarily.
No?
I don't.
No.
I think the thing that stands out to me, Mike, is the degree to which whether it's a web search or a personal search, the degree to which structured data is like now essential for showing up in these things. And so, the comment that I made after watching a Cindy Crum presentation, probably in about 2013 or 14, that really, like, all Google wants from your website is an XML feed of structured data. That's all Apple wants too. That's all ChatGPT wants too. And so I think we're going to get to a place where, essentially publishing data is going to be way more valuable than publishing content, because if people want to read content, that's going to happen sort of in these search interfaces. And once they're finally at the decision of like, okay, I'm ready to buy something, that's basically the only time they might actually go to your website. So it's a very interesting.
Well, does this become
another?
It's another version
Apple has currently with their local database is they don't have enough granular detail to compete with Google, right? when I asked for lunch, it couldn't help me. But if I asked for breakfast or dinner or a restaurant, it could. And the reason was it didn't have enough of that detailed granular data that Google has that it needs. Inventory, food items, menu items, all that sort of stuff, to make it
Well,
really,
hence their business connect push, I think, to some degree.
hence their business connect, where they are creating trusted relationships with e-commerce sites and with home businesses. And Apple, I mean, when they define personal, they just don't mean what's on your phone. They mean what you need during the day, that Apple trusts. In other words, the problem with ChatGPT, it violates Apple's brand integrity, generally speaking. They want to solve this up to that brand violation. And then, and search violates their brand violation, their brand messaging as well. Search is an uncontrollable entity, the way Google does it, filled with scams and cheats, and Apple doesn't want any part of that. So they're going to drive what they call personal as far as they can along that trusted access. And I think Business Connect is extending that trust access and bringing that stuff into this personal environment.
Does this now become another? I mean, if it performs well, people will use it for more and more stuff, right? So it will encroach upon search to some degree, not totally, but to some degree. But does this become another arena for zero-click behavior? In other words, so we've got Google, we've got ChatGPT and SearchGPT, which we're going to talk about in a second, which people are sort of debating whether or not it's going to yield click-throughs, although it is apparently, and then now this kind of Siri hermetically semi-sealed environment where you've just got a bunch of structured data and answers, which doesn't require people to go beyond that. So is zero-click search ascendant now across these platforms?
In local, it's never mattered, because if you get the driving direction of the phone call, you're happy as a business.
Right.
It's further up the consideration stack where it's a bigger concern. And clearly, all aspects of what we know as a traditional web of a user doing a search, going to a website, doing research, making a decision, all aspects of that particular flow, I think, are on the table pending the development of things like Siri and interfaces like my earbuds that allow me to interact with this whole thing in a very natural way, or perhaps glasses, whatever. Right?
We haven't even
all
really,
of that is on the table.
Yeah, I mean, this is for another conversation, but Facebook has finally gotten some traction with its Ray-Bans, right? So Apple is sort of pulling back on the Vision Pro and looking at developing a lighter weight, more Ray-Ban-like experience for its headset. And augmented reality, virtual reality have been really sort of on the cusp of adoption for a long time. It seems like the Facebook Ray-Ban glasses are now kind of breaking through to some degree, and AI is a big piece of that, right? Sort of an assistant that can give you information because you don't really have a screen to look at. And that's an interesting other conversation to have at some future point, because that may be yet another surface or another form factor that people start using in a bigger way. We'll see. So speaking of ChatGPT, unless Mike, you have other things to say about the Siri experience.
No, I mean, I am just trying to wrap my head around what I'm seeing. I mean, I do have one more thing to say. Sorry, I should never say never when you ask me that question.
Columbo Blumenthal.
And that is that this is a beta. Yes. This is a beta. Apple. It is only available on iPhone 15 Pros and iPhone 16s, and it's available on M version Max. Apple has been, and so there's a lot for it to get the kind of. We're looking at 4 years, right? We're looking at the turnover in the iPhone whole lineup. So like the new iPhone SE apparently will have the capability. we're looking at complete turnover, which is going to take 4 years, maybe 2 years to get 50%, whatever. So and it's going to take 4 years to flesh out which way these technologies are going to go, the better interaction models perhaps over voice. Those are all 4-year, plays. And I think Google's payment to Apple is a 4-year play. It's going to take 4 years for depending on what the Republicans do, either they're going to allow it or they're not, but it may take 4 years in our current slow court of law for it to resolve. So we're looking at a final resolution of this is 4 years out, where we may see glimpses of it 2 years out when enough of the line is available. And Google isn't going anyplace in 2 years. That's the other side of this story. And that's what ChatGPT is up against, which is why they have a relationship with Apple, which is a great segue to David's thing.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.